Jeffrey Schott is Senior Fellow working on international trade policy and economic sanctions at the Peterson Institute for International Economics.
Well, it's critical that we continue to talk to each other, even if we disagree, because when you talk to each other, you avoid some misunderstandings. And that can be very, very dangerous at times of tension in the Asia-Pacific region, in the Middle East, and in Ukraine. And so for the United States and China to be able to communicate clearly with each other, that's critically important in maintaining some stability and ensuring that policy decisions are taken with the best information.
And so how significant is it that there is this FaceTime between the US Secretary of State and the Chinese Foreign Minister and the Chinese President face-to-face? Does that decrease the likelihood of misunderstandings? And is it important that Mr. Blinken has been to China several times recently?
I think it's very important that we see top officials of the U.S. government meeting with Chinese officials in the United States, as we did last November during the APEC meetings, but also in China, and having Secretary Blinken and Secretary Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, two of the most important officials of the Biden administration, in China in recent weeks, I think is a show of how important Washington thinks maintaining an open dialogue with Beijing is, even with substantial differences on important issues.
And Jeffrey, turning to business and trade, China is, of course, America's third largest trading partner after Canada and Mexico. So a lot is at stake from these talks for businesses on both sides, isn't it?
There is a lot at stake, and I'm afraid economic relations are going to get worse before they get better. We've had already a significant reduction in bilateral trade. We have increased export controls. We have the risk of additional trade restrictions coming up. And each time the United States does something, China reacts in kind. So we have had a sharp downturn in U.S. imports from China, down $100 billion last year. And China's share of U.S. imports is down to 13%, when it was as high as over 20% just 5 or 6 years ago.
And so what do you make of the language coming out of Beijing today, with President Xi saying that China was happy to see a confident, open, prosperous and thriving United States, but also hoping that the US can look at China's development in a positive light? Are there incentives there for both sides to increase areas of consensus and ways to get the relationship on a firmer footing and not hold each other back?
Well, we are both major stakeholders in the world economy, and when things normalize, we will both benefit when each becomes more prosperous. But how do you get back to that road? I think one has to look at areas where we have had success working together in the recent past. Efforts by both countries to work together on climate change led to the very successful meetings at the Glasgow Climate Summit just before the pandemic. And I think we can work together on that, help rebuild trust, and hopefully that trust will carry over to trade and investment relations and remove some of the frictions and tensions that now dominate bilateral talks.